I wanted to be able to run naked through the streets of Montrose. I get shot in the neck, a tranquilizer dart. I've fallen into a pool. I'm getting tackled, thrown around.
Old School became a comedy classic that made audiences laugh and helped turn several of its actors into household names. But while millions of people enjoyed the chaos on screen, they had no idea how many surprising stories were unfolding behind the scenes. Now, more than 2 decades after the movie was released, 20 incredible facts have come to light, revealing unexpected moments, hidden connections, and behind-the-scenes stories that could completely change the way you see Old School. So, what really happened behind the scenes? Let's uncover the 20 insane facts, starting with number 20. Number 20. The documentary that led to Old School. Before making Old School, director Todd Phillips had already worked on another project called Frat House in 1998. It was a documentary that followed college fraternities from the inside, capturing their hazing rituals and giving viewers an unusually raw look at fraternity life. The film went on to win the Grand Jury Prize at the Sundance Film Festival, and HBO later purchased the documentary. However, the success of Frat House quickly turned into controversy. Members of the fraternities involved, along with Muhlenberg College, claimed that some of the scenes featured in the documentary had been staged. As questions surrounding the film continued to grow, HBO ultimately decided to shelve it, meaning Frat House was never released to the public. But Frat House was only the beginning of Todd Phillips's journey into college comedy. While attending Sundance, Ivan Reitman, the producer behind the legendary Animal House, watched the controversial documentary and immediately recognized that Phillips had the talent and vision needed to bring the college fraternity comedy back to the big screen. Together, they went on to make Road Trip in 2000, before eventually teaming up again to make Old School. Interestingly, the 2003 college comedy that would eventually become a cult classic was born from an unexpected turn of events. The raw, controversial inside look at college fraternity life could not be shown to the public, but the controversy surrounding it helped put Todd Phillips on the radar of someone who believed he could transform that same chaotic college energy into a successful comedy. Behind the scenes, the idea for Old School came from a surprisingly unexpected place. So, what exactly inspired the movie? Keep watching to find out. Number 19. The inspiration for Old School. The idea for Old School actually started with a simple conversation. Phillips had a friend in advertising named Cortland Randall, who had been inspired by the documentary Phillips had made. One day, Randall casually said, "You know what would be funny? A movie about older guys who start a fraternity of their own." That simple idea sparked the movie, and Randall would later receive a story credit for helping create the concept. From there, Phillips teamed up with writer Scott Armstrong to turn the idea into a screenplay. They spent about 2 months at Ivan Reitman's house, developing the story and shaping it into the comedy we know today. Phillips later described the experience as a comedy writing boot camp. Armstrong also drew inspiration from his own fraternity days in Peoria. He remembered how the brutal cold and boredom of college life often pushed students to come up with wild and creative ways to entertain themselves. And that became the heart of Old School, a group of grown men trying to bring back the freedom and chaos of fraternity life. The only problem was that they weren't college students anymore. As one character points out, "But this is my house. I live here, Beanie. I'm 30 years old. None of us are enrolled in college. Makes no sense." Ironically, that ridiculous idea was exactly what made Old School work. But could there be more to the story? What other events inspired Old School? Stay tuned, because there's still much more to uncover. Number 18. The crazy college stories behind Old School. While Crandall received the story credit for Old School, Todd Phillips and Scott Armstrong were given the writing credit for turning the original idea into the actual screenplay. Armstrong also brought a lot of his own college fraternity experiences into the script, using things he had personally seen, experienced, and remembered from those years to help shape some of the movie's funniest and most ridiculous moments. We were in Peoria, Illinois, so it was up to us to entertain ourselves, Armstrong explained in the movie's official production notes. He remembered that during his college years, the combination of freezing weather and boredom often left everyone with nothing to do, so they had to find creative ways to keep themselves entertained and make their own fun. According to Armstrong, many of the ideas that eventually made their way into Old School were actually inspired by things that had really happened during those years. When the weather became brutally cold, everyone would start going stir-crazy, and being stuck with nothing to do often pushed them to come up with some incredibly strange, ridiculous, and sometimes completely wild ideas just to pass the time. But the casting story is just as surprising. Several actors were considered for Old School, but who were they? And which roles could they have played? Stay tuned to find out. Number 17. Vince Vaughn almost missed Old School. Old School was packed with talented comedians who were either just starting to get noticed or were on the verge of becoming huge stars. The cast included lesser-known performers like Rod Cordry and Matt Walsh, along with Will Ferrell, who was already beginning to make the jump from Saturday Night Live into becoming one of Hollywood's biggest comedy stars. But surprisingly, the studio was not nearly as confident about Vince Vaughn's ability to handle comedy. Vaughn had already made a huge comedic impact with Swingers 7 years earlier, proving that he could make audiences laugh. However, he had since moved into more serious and dramatic roles, which were the kind of performances the studio executives had become more familiar with. Because of that, they were not convinced that Vaughn could return to comedy and successfully play such an important role in Old School. Luckily, Todd Phillips was not willing to let the studio's doubts get in the way. He pushed hard to get Vaughn into the movie and eventually convinced them to give him the chance. Vaughn was added to the cast incredibly late in the production process. In fact, it was so last minute that the crew could not even begin filming the wedding scene until Vaughn had officially signed his contract. The cameras were ready, the cast was there, but they were literally waiting for Vaughn's signature before they could start shooting. That last-minute casting decision would turn out to be much more important than anyone could have expected. After Old School, Vaughn continued moving deeper into comedy and eventually became one of the actors associated with the group that critics famously nicknamed the Frat Pack. But the funny thing is that Vaughn did not have to travel very far to reunite with some of his Old School connections for his next major comedy. Just 2 years later, while making Wedding Crashers, Vaughn found himself standing at the exact same altar inside the very same church. This time, however, he was not alongside the Old School cast. Instead, he was sharing the scene with Owen Wilson, creating another hugely successful comedy partnership. Could there still be more? Stay tuned to find out. Number 16. Vince Vaughn's Old School role. The studio had serious doubts about Vince Vaughn playing Beanie in Old School. They simply were not convinced that he could pull off the comedy. After his breakout role in Swingers, Vaughn had started moving into more serious and dramatic projects, including the 1998 remake of Psycho. Because of this change in his career, DreamWorks saw him mainly as a dramatic actor and questioned whether he could actually be funny enough to carry a comedic role. Vaughn later explained in an interview with Variety that the studio did not believe he could do comedy, but Todd Phillips was not willing to let their doubts stop him. In fact, Phillips and Scott Armstrong had written the character of Beanie with Vaughn specifically in mind. They already knew exactly what they wanted from the character, and they believed Vaughn had the personality and natural humor needed to bring him to life. Phillips was convinced that Vaughn was the perfect choice for the role. He knew Vaughn had a much funnier side that was not being shown in the serious movies he had recently been making, and he wanted the studio to see it for themselves. So, instead of simply arguing with the executives, Phillips gave them something to watch. He told them to check out Vaughn's appearances on The Late Show with David Letterman. During those interviews, Vaughn showed a completely different side of himself. He had sharp comedic timing, a natural way of delivering jokes, and an ability to make people laugh without forcing it. His appearances made it clear that Vaughn was not limited to serious dramatic roles and that he could absolutely handle comedy. But could Old School have been the breakthrough that changed the careers of some of its actors forever? Keep watching to find out. Number 15. Will Ferrell's rise to stardom. By 2003, Will Ferrell was ready to take a major step forward in his career. For 7 years, he had been making audiences laugh on Saturday Night Live, becoming one of the show's most recognizable performers. But despite all that success, he had still not proven that he could carry a major movie as the main star. He had co-led A Night at the Roxbury back in 1998, while he was still on SNL. But the movie did not turn him into the major film star many would later come to know. That all changed when Old School arrived in theaters in February 2003. The movie became Ferrell's first major leading role after leaving Saturday Night Live, giving him the opportunity to step away from the short sketches of television and prove that he could carry an entire comedy on the big screen. And he would not have to wait long for his next major opportunity. Just 10 months later, in December, Elf was released, and the huge success of that movie helped cement Ferrell's place as a genuine Hollywood movie star. For Ferrell, 2003 became a major turning point and a launching pad for the film career that would follow. Critics could not stop talking about his performance in Old School, even when they were far less impressed with the movie itself. Legendary film critic Roger Ebert gave Old School only 1 star, but even he had to acknowledge that Ferrell's performance stood out. But was it only one actor who got their big break from Old School? Or did the movie help several of its stars finally get the recognition they deserved? Stay tuned to find out. Number 14. Rob Corddry's first big role. Old School marked Rob Corddry's first major film role, giving him an early opportunity to make a name for himself on the big screen. At the time, however, most viewers knew him mainly as a correspondent on The Daily Show. One of his scenes in the movie required him to appear nude, and although Corddry had a small covering placed around his private area while filming, his bare backside still ended up appearing in the final cut of the movie. Because the scene involved nudity, Corddry was required to sign a special nudity clause before filming. The agreement gave the filmmakers permission to use his naked image as part of the movie. But the wording of the clause was far broader than you might expect. It gave the film the right to use his image in any part of the universe, in any form, even that which is not devised. In other words, Corddry had signed an agreement giving the filmmakers extremely wide permission over how his nude footage could be used. The wording was so broad that it essentially covered almost any possible way the filmmakers could imagine using the footage, making the scene one of the more unusual details from Corddry's first major movie role. The list keeps getting interesting. What could number 13 be? Stay tuned to find out. Number 13. Patrick Cranshaw's big break. The man who played Joseph Blue Pulaski in Old School, Patrick Cranshaw, had already spent decades working in Hollywood, with around 100 screen credits dating back to the 1950s. You may remember him from Bonnie and Clyde or Best in Show, but despite all those roles, he did not become widely famous until his early 80s. Then Old School gave him a new level of recognition, thanks to the unforgettable line, "You're my boy, Blue." Fans loved it so much that they began saying it to Cranshaw whenever they saw him. Sadly, he passed away in 2005, but his role as Blue left a lasting mark on comedy and pop culture. Could some of the actors' roles in Old School have come as a surprise to audiences who knew them from completely different kinds of movies? Stay tuned to find out. Number 12. Terry O'Quinn's secret role. Just 1 year before Terry O'Quinn became widely known for playing John Locke on Lost, he had a small but surprisingly memorable appearance in Old School. He played Goldberg, Mitch's boss, in an uncredited role that was filmed in only 2 days. Because the job was so quick and his appearance was so brief, O'Quinn never really talked about the role very much. most viewers probably would not even recognize him when he appears in the movie, especially because his screen time is so short. But the most surprising part of the story is that O'Quinn never even told his own sons that he had appeared in the film. He simply kept the little role to himself, without making a big deal out of it or telling them that they might eventually see him on screen. So imagine their surprise when they were watching Old School and suddenly recognized their own father. They were completely shocked and confused, and they immediately called him to ask what he was doing in the movie. It must have been quite a surprise for them to discover their dad had quietly appeared in a movie they were watching without ever telling them about it. But were there certain scenes in Old School that stood out as truly unforgettable and perhaps even more unusual than fans realized? Stay tuned to find out. Number 11. The famous streaking scene. There were no stunt doubles used for the famous streaking scene. Will Ferrell actually did the entire thing himself. Wearing nothing but sneakers and a small pouch, he ran straight down an ordinary public street while people nearby were simply walking their dogs and going about their normal day. What audiences saw on screen was not some carefully staged stunt performed by someone else. Ferrell was really out there doing it himself. Ferrell later revealed that one of the places he ran past was a 24-hour gym. When he suddenly dropped his robe, the people inside reportedly screamed and rushed toward the windows to see what was happening, only to quickly turn around and move away again. Instead of being embarrassed by their reaction, Ferrell took it as a sign that the scene was getting exactly the kind of reaction they wanted. And interestingly, the drunkenness we see in the movie was not always completely fake either. Ferrell admitted in an interview that he needed a little liquid courage before filming the streaking scene, especially because he would be running around naked near Snoop Dogg. Something he said was more intimidating than anything else. Still, sources have given different accounts about exactly how drunk Ferrell really was when the scene was filmed, so the full story remains a little unclear. But whatever the exact truth may be, Ferrell was clearly willing to go all the way for the joke. His fearless performance turned what could have been just another funny moment into one of the most unforgettable scenes in Old School, and one that audiences would continue remembering long after the movie ended. Sorry, we're going streaking through the quad and into the gymnasium. What more could be mind-blowing about the Old School? Coming in at number 10. Keep watching to find out. Number 10. Snoop Dogg's Old School cameo. Phillips later admitted that he basically had to use a little bit of persuasion to get the hip-hop artist and actor to appear in Old School. He cleverly used Snoop Dogg's interest in playing the street informant in the modern movie adaptation of the classic television show, which Phillips was also directing, to his advantage. When Phillips approached Snoop Dogg about the role, he first offered him something he knew the rapper was genuinely excited about. Phillips told him, "I want you to do Huggy Bear," and Snoop immediately became interested in the opportunity. But Phillips had another request waiting for him. After getting Snoop excited about the role, he casually added, "Oh yeah, also, will you do this little thing for me in Old School? Just a little cameo?" Since Snoop really wanted the chance to play Huggy Bear, Phillips jokingly suggested that the deal made it difficult for him to say no to the small Old School appearance. In a way, Phillips had cleverly turned one opportunity into two, getting Snoop to agree to the cameo while also giving him a role he genuinely wanted. Phillips later laughed about the situation, admitting that Snoop kind of had to do it because he was so excited about playing Huggy Bear. Number 9. The Snoop Dogg Hangout. On the last day of filming, Vince Vaughn and a few of his friends were invited to hang out in Snoop Dogg's trailer, where they spent some time playing video games and relaxing together. It was a casual way for everyone to enjoy themselves and celebrate the end of the shoot. Vaughn later remembered that while he and the others were having fun, he happened to see Luke Wilson sitting alone inside his own trailer, quietly watching the news. The funny part was that Wilson had not been told about the get-together at all. He had no idea that Vaughn and the others were hanging out with Snoop Dogg just nearby while he was sitting by himself watching television. Did any of the actors feel like they were left behind as the movie's success grew? Stay tuned to find out. Number 8. Wilson gets teased by his co-stars. Vince Vaughn, Luke Wilson, and Will Ferrell gave themselves the nickname The Wolfpack years before Todd Phillips would eventually use the name for The Hangover. The three actors had become close friends, and they were constantly joking around, teasing each other, and looking for new ways to get a laugh. Their friendship was built around this kind of playful competition, although some of their jokes could be surprisingly sharp. One of the more painful jokes came when Ferrell decided to make fun of Legally Blonde, the movie Luke Wilson had appeared in. Instead of simply mentioning the film, Ferrell turned the title into a joke and called it Legally Bland. It was a simple insult, but it was enough to make fun of Wilson and the movie at the same time. Wilson later admitted that the joke did not exactly make him feel very good, especially coming from one of his close friends. But Wilson was not about to let Ferrell have the last word. He quickly fired back with a joke of his own, reminding Ferrell that moving from television into movies was not always easy. Wilson told him, "The transition from TV to the movies isn't a very easy one, so you might just want to keep one foot back in TV just in case this whole movie thing falls through." That comeback turned the joke right back on Ferrell, showing that Wilson could give it just as well as he could take it. This kind of back and forth became a normal part of their friendship, with the three actors constantly teasing one another, trading insults, and trying to see who could come up with the funniest comeback. Number 7. The earmuff scene was made up. Before filming even began, Vince Vaughn spent time working closely with Will Ferrell to build the backstories of their characters and figure out exactly how they knew each other. Instead of simply showing up and reading the lines, they took the time to understand their characters and the history between them. Vaughn later explained that this process helped him really understand who Bernard was, which made it much easier for him to improvise and come up with unexpected moments during filming. One of the best examples was the famous earmuff scene. In the scene, Bernard accidentally swears in front of the children and then quickly tells one of the kids to cover their ears. Vaughn explained that this entire moment was not something that had been carefully planned in the script. It happened naturally while they were filming, with Vaughn creating the moment right there on set. The earmuff scene where he swears in front of the kids, and then I tell the kid to earmuff, that all is off the cuff. But that stuff is a lot easier to do when you know who you are and your circumstances, and who your characters are, Vaughn explained. For Vaughn, the key to good improvisation was understanding the character before trying to make anything up. Once he knew exactly who Bernard was, how he thought, how he behaved, and what his relationship was with the other characters, he could react naturally instead of simply trying to force a joke. Could the locations where the movie was filmed have played a bigger role than we realized? Keep watching to find out. Number 6. The campus was filmed in Los Angeles. Most of the college scenes in Old School were filmed in Los Angeles, using UCLA and USC as the main locations. However, one helicopter shot of the campus was actually filmed over Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Todd Phillips had already used the same aerial footage in Road Trip and reused it for Old School. Interestingly, neither movie filmed any ground scenes at Harvard. The filmmakers simply used the aerial shot to make the fictional college look more convincing. Number 5. The hidden connections in Old School. Who is the wedding singer who secretly slips swear words into Bonnie Tyler's Total Eclipse of the Heart? That would be Dan Finnerty, the lead singer of the Dan Band, a comedy group that became popular in Hollywood nightclubs by performing songs made famous by female singers and giving them a much more outrageous twist. Finnerty, who is also a comedian and married to actress Kathy Najimy, became known for turning familiar songs into hilarious and inappropriate performances. He later brought the same style to other Todd Phillips movies, including Starsky and Hutch and The Hangover. There is also another interesting connection. The church where Will Ferrell's character gets married in Old School appeared again just 2 years later in Wedding Crashers, starring Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson. So the same church connected two major comedies featuring members of the Old School cast. Was Old School really the success it appeared to be? Or was there a hidden story behind its success? Keep watching to find out. Number 4. The success of Old School. The budget for Old School was reportedly around $24 million. The movie went on to make about $76 million in North America and another $11 million from international markets, turning it into a successful box office hit. Old School did more than just make money. It also helped turn Will Ferrell into a major comedy star and played a role in creating the term the Frat Pack. The name was used to describe a group of popular comedy actors who often worked together and appeared in the same movies. The group included Ferrell, Vince Vaughn, Luke Wilson, Owen Wilson, Ben Stiller, Jack Black, and several other familiar comedy stars. Number 3. The future stars hidden in Old School. Just 2 years later, Owen Wilson would crash another wedding in the 2005 comedy Wedding Crashers, but Old School had another interesting connection. Several actors in the fraternity would later become major stars. Simon Helberg, who played Jerry, would become famous as Howard on The Big Bang Theory. Patrick J. Adams appeared as Patch before becoming Mike Ross on Suits. Even Ellen Pompeo, who played Mitch's love interest Nicole, was only 2 years away from becoming Meredith Grey on Grey's Anatomy. Looking back, Old School was quietly filled with future stars who were still relatively unknown at the time. Were there actors who truly went above and beyond to make this movie a success? Keep watching to find out. Number 2. The man who kept Old School grounded. While Will Ferrell and Vince Vaughn went all out with their wild performances, Luke Wilson took a calmer approach. He played the straight man, keeping Mitch grounded while everyone around him became increasingly chaotic. It is a difficult role in comedy, but Wilson made it look easy. He was so sharp and prepared that many of his scenes were completed in just one take, including the major opening homecoming scene. The crew even started calling him One Take Wilson. Todd Phillips and Scott Armstrong believed his grounded performance helped balance the craziness of the other characters. Armstrong also praised Wilson's natural sense of existential angst, something Wes Anderson had noticed in Bottle Rocket and Rushmore. That quality made Mitch feel real and relatable, giving the comedy a believable center. What insane and intriguing fact about Old School made it to the top? Keep watching to find out. Number 1. The Old School sequel that never happened. By 2006, Scott Armstrong had written Old School Dues, a planned sequel that would have followed the fraternity on a wild spring break trip. The story would have brought the original characters back for another round of chaos, this time in a completely different setting. Will Ferrell and Vince Vaughn both read the script, but were not convinced. They felt they would be kind of doing the same thing again, and worried the sequel would simply repeat what had already worked in the first movie. Luke Wilson, however, had a very different reaction. He was excited about the script and wanted to return for another Old School adventure. Despite his enthusiasm, the sequel never moved forward. Could these insane facts change the narrative of the movie Old School? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for staying with us as we looked into these interesting facts. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video on your screen to explore more stories. See you there.